Bad Publicity back on the scene. Another social gathering. Caleb's back from Mexico. Missed you last week. You do look like you got a little bit of sun there, but just not around the chin area.
It's a moon tan.
It's a Canadian tan, right?
Canadian tan, yeah.
The lumberjack tan.
Yeah, it's not direct sunlight. It's a reflection.
Bad Publicity
off of the snow.
back on the scene.
So, most of it's on the undercarriage.
Another social. Got a little feedback there. So guys, how's everybody doing? Like, let's start off with what you guys are playing first before we get into the nitty gritty here. Greg, what are you rocking these days?
I'm boycotting Shapers and Criminals for a while, and I'm going straight Anarch, and I've been noising it up like crazy. Just because, like, the funnest thing about noise is I feel like you get more accesses with noise than any other player as long as you can get in that archives. And anyway, noise has just been a lot of fun with the big box coming. It's only going to get better. Actually, you know what? I think noise actually benefits the least from the big box. Not that we need to get into that today, but I was looking at that. Other than that, I've been playing, in light of last week's asset show, I built sort of an asset HB Fast Advance deck that is a very horizontal style with a lot of all the ice is 4 or cheaper, which is pretty cool. And that's been doing extremely well. I had turtlebacks in there and then took them out for a third Sansan. Turtlebacks performed really well, but I mean, Sansan is just so nice to have. But those decks have been doing fairly well unless I play Stimhack. If I play Stimhack, I draw all my agendas in like the first 10 cards. Every time.
You know what's really funny about that statement there is it seems like you're trying to get into Anarch before the big box comes out, so you can just tell people that you were playing before the box came out.
No, I've dabbled here and there with noise, but I was just getting bored of blue and green.
Yeah.
Same similar decks, kind of over and over, and not that noise is really anything explosively innovative at this time, but it's just a totally different play style that's a ton of fun.
Caleb, what do you got going on in your deck box?
So for the last little while, I've been basically been blue my entire Netrunner career, and I recently switched to green for runner. And nothing fancy. It's Kate, and I've just been enjoying that and testing and tweaking and that sort of thing. I like to build the decks that are good against everything, and that's becoming more and more of a challenge as days go by, as these new identities for a corporation keep hitting the table. Corp-wise, I've been doing Jinteki, Black Tree. I really enjoy the game within a game that the Black Tree offers. Constantly, your opponent not knowing if death is just after this next run or not is very appealing to me, and I enjoy playing against the player as opposed to playing the game. So that's another great way to do it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny when you're saying about building runner decks these days. It's hard to keep them robust.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people are just trying to do that, but I find that if you do that, you're really kind of hindering yourself a little bit, as you've noticed. Like there's in just the creative aspect of it, right? Like what you can put in and what you can't, and what you have to cut to keep it so rounded together, and
there's only so much room, and then having the shaper with all of the tutors that they do, like the search cards, then it makes them the best candidate, I think, at the moment for a take on all comers, and probably going into the near future, but it is proving to be very difficult to do.
What do you guys think about, and I've kind of jumped on this bandwagon now of one feedback filter in the deck. I've seen a lot more people use one copy of it at least in there. The games that I've watched, I've seen a lot of Andy decks run with one feedback filter, and then what they're doing is hoping that it's in their opening hand against the Jinteki at least.
Yeah, I think it's a nice card. I kind of like the card before a lot of people were playing it. Not that, you know, that sounds super hipster, but I've always kind of liked that card, just because it stays on the table for net damage at least. And as long as you have money, whether it's like Opus or Andy's playing like you know, security testing, and you can get pretty rich with that, especially against Jinteki. And yeah, it's a nice card. It's a nice fill-in. If you get it, you're safe. I mean, you're probably not going to be able to prevent all the net because it's pretty expensive to use it, but at least you can save your own skin and save some cards, because how many games in a real tough Jinteki game are you, you know, down to 1 or 2 cards pulling out the victory, and that can be all that you need.
Yeah.
Aaron jumped in the chat really quick, and I'll just read a comment that he pulled off here. He said the nice part about feedback filter is you only need one as opposed to a plascrete, because you cycle down to it when you need it. He ran one in Gen Con. I am liking it the best as well too, just because, like you said, Greg, it stays on the table, and opposed to Net Shield, you know, it's not doing anything like to hinder you, right? It's
Plus
not.
Net Shield's taken MU.
That's what I mean about the hindering aspect of it, right? It is a little bit more of a burden because you're paying pretty hefty, but I mean, you're gonna really have to pick and choose when you're gonna, like, obviously if you're getting hit by a snare, you're not gonna pay that, like, what is it, $9 or whatever to get rid of all that damage. You know, you probably just keep enough to stay alive or then some. But I find it works very well in Shaper with coupled with a Magnum Opus. That's where I've experimented with it the most. And Aaron and I are both on the same page there, as he says pairs nicely with Opus too.
Yep.
Anything else you guys have seen lately for? You know, we got store championships coming up. So what should the people be looking out for right now? I know, again, another week goes by and we get closer, and a lot of people are still thinking the big box is going to be out for their store championships, and either this weekend or, you know, the end of this month. Is it about time to bite the bullet and start building a deck without Ordering Chaos? Take your proxies out? Or do you just, you know, maybe is the answer, you know, you have your decks ready for Ordering Chaos, and if they don't come in, you just grab your Near Earth hub and, you know, Andy or Mac and head to the store?
Well, here's what I will say. Unless you're certain the card is like a shoe-in fit into your deck, I'd be very leery to just throw a deck together and play a tournament without testing it if you're serious about the tournament. If you're not serious about the tournament, who cares, right? But it's always been my opinion that you're going to be better off playing a deck that's slightly worse, that you know inside and out, than a, quote, slightly better deck that you're not comfortable with. So, you know, if you need to run proxies to get comfortable, go for it. But I would say if you're not comfortable doing that or whatever, just play something you're very, very familiar with for a tournament.
Caleb, what do you think people should be doing here? You think that we need to really do a box dig, you know, like go through those cards, be prepared, or do you think we should just play with what we have right now and
I think that
bite the bullet? Or
yeah, it's different strokes for different folks, right? So again, based on how you're building your decks, I mean, if you are building to play against meta, and it's a lot easier to do that in these like store champions and that sort of thing, because you know pretty much who's going to be there and what they're going to be bringing. So it's easier to build against them, right? So if you are not building a deck to take on all comers, if you're building against them, then it's definitely a good idea to be rooting through these boxes and seeing what's coming up, just because you already will have a preconception of what they're going to be bringing to the table from the new stuff, just based on conversations that you've had with them, that sort of thing. So you should maybe consider doing the same thing just to keep your edge, if that is the edge that you were planning on leaning on. If you are a take-on-all-comers kind of person, then it really shouldn't matter, right? That's
Yeah,
my thoughts on it.
totally agree. I think you just got to. There's going to be two types of decks. I think that you'll see, or two types of players. You have one player that's going to look at the cards up until the source and work that out. And put a lot of thought and practice into it and build a solid deck. Then you're going to have somebody that's a future-looking player that has looked ahead, and he's going to try and catch somebody off guard with a combo that people aren't ready for. It's almost like when what was it, Honor and Profit came out just before regionals, and they had that quest completed silhouette one, right, from Chicago, I believe. And that took a lot of people by surprise because they just weren't ready for that style of deck.
In a glacier meta, too.
Exactly, right? So, you're going to try and catch people off guard. The other thing is that, you're not going to have a lot of time with those cards, and your deck's not going to be soaked enough. So unless you've been proxying for a while, I think if your store championship is in this month of January, you should definitely maybe not count on having Honor and Profit available to you. And you guys want to say anything else about store championships this month and the current card pool?
Yeah, I'll just mimic exactly what you just said. If it's coming soon and we're pretty certain that the box is not going to be out by that time, then you are really shooting yourself in the foot. If your current deck is just waiting to shoe in those slots that are coming out in the next box, and if that's the case, then you're probably way better off building something that's much stronger with the current card pool.
Yeah, if you're building a deck that is one or two slots are your flex plays,
Yeah.
which and that you can pull something in from that box, that shouldn't be so much of a problem. But if you're running like a new identity and more than 65% of your deck is comprised of cards that are not released yet, yeah, you might want to put it back in the oven and let it bake. Other than that, I would expect a lot of replicating perfection. Just because that's what took Worlds, and I think a lot of people saw the power and how well Dan ran that deck. So there's not much that needs to change for it to be still a dominant play.
Yeah, I think as far as what we'll see at Store Championships on the Corp side, I don't think much will change. We'll see replicating perfection. We'll see near Earth Hub, kill decks as well as biotic decks. You'll see some Blue Sun decks. Those are going to be the primary. What did I say? Three decks to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
After that, HP Glacier is still good. HP Fast Advance is still good. It's a little less out of, it's not the flavor of the day right now. Even though I think they're just as viable. So on the runner side, I think what you really need to watch out for is, again, probably the same culprits: Andy, Noise, Kate, probably a little Chaos Theory too after the nice showing of Worlds with Chaos Theory and the Polish champion. But the one thing about Andy that has changed between now and Worlds is primarily going to be the addition of Switchblade and the stealth game that Andy plays nowadays.
Yeah,
which is quite strong. It's a nice build, so watch out for that. I think the way you play against that is you either play very limited sentries or you go very sentry heavy.
Try and burn the stealth credits away.
Exactly, because once you have 2 or 3 sentries stacked on a server, it's virtually impossible for them to run through it without getting hurt at least.
I totally agree. That was that's a good call there and a great tip, because I do feel that Stealth Andy has picked up steam. You definitely see her being used way more than she was before, which was I don't even recall anybody running that style at Worlds.
No, I don't even. Was Switchblade even out at Worlds? I think it came out in the pack that was released at Worlds, so you couldn't play it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm getting my timings mixed up on that, so that would make sense.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how that went down. But it's a nice build. I mean, it's standard Andy, security testing, John Masonori. A lot of people are playing Masonori over Mr. Lee now.
Which was a great play by, if you see this, the second place, the
Min.
he ran that combo, and that opened up a lot of people's eyes with security testing, Desperado, and John Masonori. It's doing a lot of work on one click. I mean, risk for reward, but to each his own. Caleb, you got anything else to add? I'm pretty wrapped up there on our little pep talk for Store Champs.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
So, Jameson.
Yeah.
As a lead-in, what are you playing?
Oh, probably Ian Sterling or something.
Probably. Corp though.
Yeah. Man, oh man, have I been playing a lot of Genomics. I'm always going to get ripped apart on the pronunciation part. I always prefer someone else to pronounce things first, and I just go along with it. This is the new Jinteki ID from the source. I love it. I have started with a deck, and I am probably on rendition 15 of this deck. And I know the other night, Greg and I were up, I don't know, till like 2 in the morning Eastern time. And I think even we went through like 5 versions. We built it, looked at it, tore it apart, built it, looked at it, tore it apart, rebuilt it, scrapped the whole thing, started fresh, went with a new idea, and man, there is just so much that this ID can do. I mean, I was so excited to see this, because this is Jinteki doing fast advance. I think this is, you can build a great Jinteki fast advance here and still have enough pins in the cushion to be prickly.
Wow.
It's just, my mind is just moving faster than my mouth right now, and my mouth can't catch up.
Industrial Genomics has got you working at a whole nother level, boss.
Let me tell you, the ideas that came through my head when this came out were just nuts. So let's go to some thoughts here from Caleb, because unfortunately when I got the pack, he's the one that took the brunt of this.
Yeah. So
thoughts in general here.
So my thoughts in general. The question I got to ask you is, because I haven't seen this new one you've made. Do we still have advanceable traps?
I would say yes.
You would say yes or yes?
Yes.
You should know what's in the deck. So basically, I played against this his first rendition with actually there wasn't any advanceable traps in that one, but there was a ton of stuff that was just very, very annoying, that was exceedingly expensive for me to get rid of, because I had a very poor ways of getting into his archives at that point in time. And what I kind of found myself wanting more than anything was a bloody infiltration. Just give me an infiltration. Let me see what that is that he just Mishino Shinned out there, and see what's going on. Because other than that, it was kind of like shooting ducks, was it not, Jameson?
Yeah. Which is very interesting. You say that you look at this ID and you're like, I really want an infiltration, because I think Greg and I talked for like half an hour on if Psychic Field should be included in a deck like this. He was really pushing me to put it in. He's like, cut this for Psychic Field, cut this for Psychic Field. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm like, am I going to come up with enough exposed to see this? But so it was in for about 10 minutes, and then I cut it.
Solid run, good run for it.
Yeah.
That's all I can think about really with that. Like, based on, again, the types of runner decks that I'm building, that's something that I'm heavily considering now, because I think that just due to its freshness, the Genomics will be Genomics will be prevalent, I think, at a lot of these store championships coming up. So
Yeah,
I'm torn.
if anyone's interested, and if I get enough comments below, I will. I've saved every rendition so far, or the most meatiest ones, and I will build the most mother-long post that you've ever seen, just about decklist after decklist and how I feel that it's changed over. So if I get enough buzzed for that, I'll try and put something like that together. Greg, let me ask you this. What was your first impression? You opened the pack, you saw this card. Where did your mind go?
I didn't think too much of it at first.
You're like, next card? That's where your mind went?
It just seemed really weird to me. It seemed really like, okay. Like I saw it, I'm like, okay, interesting. And I guess I didn't think about it too much, but I definitely, wanted to build a deck with it because it's the only ID in there, and why not? It's tricky, I think. And I don't claim to, I don't have a lot of experience with it. I've played against it probably more than I've played with it, although I've played with it a few times. The card that sticks out to me that really shines in the deck, I think, is Ronin. You mentioned maybe Fast Advance coming alive for Jinteki with Sansan. So I think that for me, what's tricky about it is it's like how can I say this? So you're obviously upping the trash cost of things, but the question becomes, what kind of game do you want to play? Because Jinteki's game inherently is damage, but this doesn't necessarily tie hand in hand with damage necessarily. Other than maybe you'll see a snare in R&D, can't trash it, and then maybe you get a chance to see that snare later on in the game. That's where really the trash cost can maybe cause more damage. So in that sense, it's kind of hard. Like when we were talking, Jameson, about what are we going to cut, what are we going to play, it's like, man, how much do we want to lean on these traps? Because are we really trying to flatline them? Or is it sort of like a hybrid where you're trying to slow them down so that they're afraid of the flatline, so they have to draw a card so they can't trash the Sansan? You know what I mean? So it's like you got to balance it between the two, because you want to leverage Jinteki's strengths of doing damage and threatening a flatline, but it's a lot harder to do it outside of PE. That being said, you get a big bonus with cards like Sansan and Ronin, where it's, we'll say Sansan, where you can play a style with maybe some Fast Advance with Trick of Light and stuff. So, it's tricky. I think it's a tricky style. I think deck building is probably a pretty tight art form to be able to get the deck to do what you want. And then at the same token, you kind of have to be able to protect archives, whether it be with Shocks, Shakus, or eventually it'll probably have to be Ice too. So you have to protect a lot of servers in centrals, but theoretically you should be able to leave remotes a little less protected. So I don't know. It's a very dynamic identity.
Well, before we move on, something you said again about Ronins, there was plenty of turns where, due to the Shock presence in his archives and the Ronin presence, or what I thought was going to be Ronins on the table, the Ronins were protection for his archives, because if I ran his archives, I was going to take the shock damage and then be killed next turn, and I couldn't know for certain whether to run the Ronin or not, because I had no clue whether there was June bugs or what have you going on in there. So it was the Ronins are so dirty in that with that ID.
So some of the thinking that I've went through with this process is I think it starts out like everybody else, where you think Jinteki and then you think damage. When I started to think about damage, I started to think about the cards that you need in there, Ronins, then your other basic cards that Jinteki has. Obviously, everybody is going to start the same way. So like that brings us to shock. So shock is pretty much an auto include. Bottom line, you can't run this deck without shock because they're going to be running the archives a couple times. So you really need something like that in there. The other piece you need is Jackson Howard, obviously. You really got to get those shocks into your archives as quickly as possible. So you're going to Jackson your hand, fix it up, maybe, move an agenda over or whatever because you've got the protection there. But you want these shocks in there as soon as possible, and that's all they're doing. The other thing that this deck has is snares. I really think that this is an auto include again, and it's probably an auto include in most Jinteki decks here and there, other than your odd replicating perfection style. But this card is doing work for you because you're boosting the trash cost of it. So now it's not only doing damage, but you're hoping to have enough face down cards that they can't trash this and it stays in your hand. This is your hand protection. You're not in a rush to pull it out of R&D, but you are holding it in your hand and keeping it there as long as you can. The one card that I thought was an auto include and now I'm not 100% sold on just because of deck space is Shikyu. This is also an archive threat for obvious reasons because it triggers from the archive and it does damage. It lowers the agenda, so it gives you it makes the runner have to make a choice when access. But that's your bulk of this deck. So whether you're a Shikyu lover or you're not, I think those are the staple of auto includes. Fast forward a couple renditions. I was thinking of the most important thing you can do is keep your archives down as long as possible. The card that is going to let you do that the best, which I believe is an auto include for this deck now, in my latest one, is Caprice. Caprice needs to be over, or not over, but in the root of your archives, because they're going to have to get through a little bit of taxing ice. Then with the Caprice, they're not even going to get a chance to flip those cards yet. Am I correct at that timing, Greg?
Yes.
This card has done work. We all know that a Caprice on a server already can hinder a runner running that server. Some people will see the Caprice res and they'll just go somewhere else. This is going to be your deterrent. This is going to be your protection to keep those cards down as long as possible. Those are my absolute auto includes. You guys have any thoughts on those?
Solid. I think the Caprice is a really nice touch for protecting your archives. And the nice thing too is if they say, screw it on archives, then now you can pitch agendas in there. Who cares?
Exactly. Another thing too is that if you have a Caprice on archives waiting for the run, because they're not going to do it every time because they know you're ditching shocks, you can have a second Caprice rezzed up on your scoring server, which is going to be great because you have face down cards. Now if they make it through there, not only do they have to deal with the side game, but now they have an increased Caprice trash cost. So I mean, where you just get into a bad situation here.
So can I ask, is Ronin also in this rendition as well?
Ronin's been in and out.
Okay.
It's been a lot of space. I can tell you that the hardest thing for this deck to do is make money right now.
Okay, because just the way that I see it, if you're going to Caprice up your archives, but if you're going to go for the fast advance, then that's perfect, right? If you're going for the kill, or if you really are kind of leaning that way, then you do want them to access the archives, take the damage, so that the Ronin can finish them off, right? Or the ends, depending on what you're doing with it. So yeah, that's why I was asking, because if you're playing that game and you're capricing the archives, then a lot of time people are going to be like, well, screw that, I'll go somewhere else, and they'll dive into the R&D or the HQ at that point in time. I would it obviously didn't help me a terrible amount when I was playing against you, because everything in your deck was a 3-pointer. But yeah, that's where my mind goes on that topic.
So the only thing that could break this, right, Greg, is the shard. The shard overwrites Caprice.
Because you don't have to run.
Yeah. I can tell you that it's been a little frustrating though, because what can kill this deck is the econ. If you can't pay for your traps, there's nothing worse than pulling a snare or somebody running an advanceable trap and you can't pay the initial cost. So the corporation having money is crazy, and also the low trash cost on some of these assets if you don't have your archive set up. And then obviously the worst is, I was playing against Hollis, and this guy reoccurred Deus Ex like the guy had 7 in his deck, and I was just ready to reach through the monitor and give him a slap, man.
That's my guy.
But reoccurring Deus Ex was just killing. Like when I had the Ronins, he was just like, there was nothing I could do. Nothing.
There's another card that wrecks this deck.
Go ahead.
3-letter word, IMP.
Yeah. It's stuff that you don't have to pay the trash. I thought you were going to say the lampreys when you lampreyed the hell out of me.
Oh, that was fun for one of us. Your deck already struggles with econ enough, and I'm shooting 3 lampreys a turn on you.
Yeah, I couldn't do much there.
So Imp is going to rip them from the hand and from the R&D, but if it's already down and if you do have advanceable traps, is Imp the smart move there?
Well, Imp is just so good. Like, I don't know how you can play a deck without Imp, unless you're a criminal. But Imp is going to take care of the Sand. Imp is going to take care of any asset econ that hits the table. It's also going to hit power cards like Trickle Light if it's in there. Imp is just amazing. It totally nullifies the identity. And at some point in the show, I wanted to mention this. I guess now is as good a time as any. I don't think it's too far off topic. The noise matchup between Industrial Genomics and Noise is fascinating, because on one end you have Noise milling cards face down in the archives. So now snares are incredibly difficult to trash. Everything is incredibly difficult to trash. That's an asset or an upgrade. On the other token, as Jameson mentioned, a lot of times you're trying to just look for cards and pitch them in the archives. Well, in the game we played, Jameson, did I end up milling you for the win?
No, it was close.
Okay. But that's a big threat, because if you're sitting there pulling 2 cards at a time with Jackson in a click just so you can get overdrawn and ditch, you got to really be careful of that against Noise. Noise is a very tricky matchup for this deck, and although it looks like maybe it's going well for you because you have all these cards that are helping you with your ability, they might be playing the Shard, B, you're getting milled anyway. Those aren't cards necessarily you wanted there. C, they're probably playing 3 Imps. So, Noise, I think, is a very, very tricky matchup for this deck.
Yeah, I remember that the game that we were playing and really heavily testing one of the builds was I only had 4 cards left in my R&D, and then I had to like Jackson some agendas back, because I think it was like game point for each of us, but at different ways. Like I think you were at 6 agenda points and I had 5. So I mean or something like that. And then I had to Jackson an agenda back in, and I Jacksoned those medical breakthrough things, and then what happened was I just drew up. I couldn't get it. Then you lampreyed the hell out of me, and then ran my R&D, and then pulled it. I mean, there was only like 2 or 3 cards left in there by the time you did it, and it was just game over.
So
Yeah.
before we get off the Jackson and Noise topic here, so in that matchup, then wouldn't Jackson's job just change? Like you'd no longer need to draw. You wouldn't really want to draw off of him. You'd let Noise do his thing to fill up your archives, and then you just use him to pull back what you really can't afford to lose at that. You know what I mean? Whereas
Yeah.
if you just play the Genomics by itself with Jackson, then you're drawing up for the purpose of discarding, and then it doesn't really matter if you snap them or not, because you had really good control over what went in, but now you can snap them. And if you have 3 of them, then you're kind of okay, right? That might be why that game went on very.
Yeah, but there are going to be times when you need to use his draw ability. I mean, I'm not really counting on any other draw in this deck. I mean, another thing to talk about is I did try to use anonymous tip as my influence value, but I just find I didn't need it. I don't.
I'd say daily business show would be a lot better, wouldn't it? As an asset?
And that's where and that's where our heads went to.
Yeah,
because
you're referring to using Jackson to draw, like Jackson's really draw, so that draws you up to 5. But if you're playing against Noise, you don't need to overdraw to pitch. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying there are. I'm not overdrawing to pitch. I was just using it as draw ability.
Yeah, perfectly fine.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Caleb. I don't think you want to do that. If you're playing Noise, that's a strategy you do not want to employ.
Mm-hmm. Another card that I feel has done, or you could use in this deck, is the Chairman Hero. There has been some talk, and I did try it out, but I mean, I have never still even I tested 1 copy. I'll put 1 copy in the deck, and if it hits, if it gets stolen, it gets stolen. But I just never had a time where I wanted to put it out and res it. Just,
I mean, it's like what we were saying, right? Or what I was saying. Are you going for speed or are you going for flatline? Because I think that's kind of maybe the best way to play this ID is you just go all out speed, and you throw out a whole bunch of cards. You get a Sansan down. You draw as fast as you can, and hope they don't play him.
I 100% agree, and these were all the thinking that led me away to a damage deck. I think damage is there as a secondary thing. It's something that can pressure the runner to make mistakes, and more of an inconvenience. Like if you're sitting there with some, a hand of your breakers, which breaker do I play? I don't know. All of a sudden you hit a snare and your breaker's gone, or a couple pieces that you need. Or obviously your multi-access cards, right? If you get damaged, and bye some econ into legwork, that's things that are going to open up better windows for the corporation. That being said, I do think that fast advance is the way to go with this. The question for you guys now is, let's talk about what assets you're putting into something like this. Do you think this is better for making, we just showed everyone Chairman Hero, and I'll bring him back up again for a second. So Chairman Hero you see has a trash cost of 6. Do you think that what makes assets good in this is higher trash assets, like a base cost and then an addition? Or do you look at all the so many good assets in the past that had a 1? You know, like... Yeah, right? Like, you put a melange in here, you take the risk that obviously they're going to, draw it up. But, I mean, who wants to trash a melange for 5? Right? Like...
But you kind of have to. That's the thing.
Yeah, I know, but it puts people into those situations, right? So would you rather have high base assets and then making it even higher? Or do you use these ones that were so good with low?
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's not the question to ask. Although I mean, I get the question. I think it just matters what you're trying to do with your deck. You know, like if you have the time to use a mine, rock it. But on the same token, if you're really strapped for clicks, use pad campaign. You know, I think it's more because at the end of the day, it's kind of like IT department where at a certain point it's just ridiculous. Like once you get 6, 7, 8 cards in your archives, it doesn't really matter. What's another 2 or 3 cost between a melange and a pad? Not much, you know. So I think it's more of you can play cards like melange maybe a little bit more liberally than you would have in the past, or at least you don't feel like you have to protect it as much. So I think priority goes to what your deck needs, but to go off your question, Jameson, yeah, maybe it does open up the ability to play cards that you normally wouldn't play because it's so difficult to trash them.
Because I mean, when I look at my question, like what does my deck need, and I think economy, well, both of these cards are doing economy for me, but do I need, like, I'll tell you one card that is gone out of my deck right away is Sundew. As much as Sundew can make you good money, the problem is it's a 2 trash, and if I don't have enough stuff in my archives, that's gone so quick. And now that's a card that, because it's not built in the replicating perfection style where, okay, they have to run through my servers, then have enough to hit this, I can't put a Sundew out.
Or you just hold it in hand until you have enough in the archives.
But that's, like, you don't want to be banking. To me, I don't want to be holding my economy back.
So that's your econ, right? And if it's in your hand, it's not doing any good. Especially the trickle like that. Yeah,
so I mean that card... I can't play that card. An interesting card that...
Do you guys think so? Sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah.
I just want to stay on topic because isn't that how you play it with RP, Sundew? You don't just throw it into a remote. You got to make sure it's protected.
You still have to make sure it's protected, yeah.
So a lot of times against RP players, you don't see the Sundew come out till like mid-game.
It depends too, because it can go depending on how their breakers are doing and what you've put up. You know what I mean? And if it's appetizing. So every time I play RP, and I don't know if this is everybody, it's definitely me. I see. So let's just say they put a Sundew out super early, and let's just say they have just even one piece of ice over top of everything. So I say, okay, well that Sundew is going to cost me it's 2 trash, but it's also going to cost me whatever the heck it's going to cost me to get into one of these servers, too, right? So and the damage that I may incur there if I don't have the right breaker, So it's very, very tricky to balance whether or not this is a good idea to trash this Sundew at this moment, even early game. That's what plays through my brain.
I haven't been able to or I like Jinteki builds that keep the ice low. Like, so for me, I can't spare in this build especially an ice over top, because I'm not building a remote server that's going to be a glacier over here. So I'm not taxing the runner coming all the way through a central and then all the way through a remote. I really have to focus on keeping my centrals more tightly knit together.
But that's the whole thing of IG, right? Is you don't need the ice to protect it because it has the trash cost.
Trash cost.
What, with the Sundews?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I mean, as soon as, like, it's such a risk, and and I've been relying on Sundew before, but as soon as it's, if it gets pulled early or trashed early and I haven't set up, like people will pay $3 or 3 credits to trash a Sundew, no problems. But
I'll pay 5 or 6.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta pay 5, 6, but then again, if I just paid 2 and they paid 5, I'm pretty damn happy about it.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I mean, these are econ slots that I've now burned, so I have no way of making that money back if I'm relying on this.
It's a little fragile, and
Yeah.
I guess if you don't have early answers for the game, then maybe you don't play it. But I don't think it's like a dead card in industrial genomics. If you get it out in once you have 4 or 5, even 2, 3 cards in there, it seems reasonable. I mean, if they're gonna pay, because maybe they run it first click, and maybe you paid 2 and then they pay 5. Like, to me, that seems like a reasonable trade.
Yeah.
So, I'll just put it this way: if you are gonna play Sundew, you have to play it with caution.
100%. Turtlebacks is one that fits into this style here. I mean, I wish I had enough slots to feed this sometimes, because this bounces in and out. But it's already a low to res, high trash card. I mean, you're add another little bit to it, and people will think twice. I've had turtlebacks on the table, and people just won't get rid of it.
No, they won't.
They do not. Some people don't know how much money that you can generate off the turtlebacks.
Yeah, they're probably thinking, oh, how many servers is he really going to make? Is it worth my $7, $8 to trash it? But depending on how you're building, it's going to pay off big time.
Yeah, so I've really loved having turtlebacks in there. And then, to say again, Sands are great already in here. I can't tell enough good things about using Sansan in this identity.
Yeah, I think the Sands are great, especially if you have a triple light as well, because then you can score those 4 for 2s.
And Trick of Light is, you take the 2 best fast advance cards in the game, and now you can put them to real good work in an identity here. You have Mishinoshins helping you out, so you Mishinoshins traps, then to feed your Trick of Lights, and you got the Sands there. So like, so much stuff, and that's why you don't really need to worry so much about protecting the remotes. Like, I know Ben jumped in the chat here and saying that it's not good to run your remotes naked like that, but I mean, I've had pretty good luck with it so far. Anything else you guys want to say coming to mind? Like, do you want to talk about agenda suites that you guys are using in Jinteki?
I wanted to ask you what, so in this deck that you've been hinting around here in your final build, what does that agenda suite look like? And is it something that's going to transfer well to IG builds? It's all 3-pointers in you when we went head to head.
Yeah, I've restructured it a little bit, and I'm not fully committed to an agenda suite yet. I like to keep my agenda density as low as possible. So what I've tried is obviously the 3 future perfects. What was the last shard that came out? Is it Utopia?
Utopia.
The one that it costs extra for advancement counters on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Utopia shard. And that plays in very nicely if you can get that scored early, it's just another way that you're making the runner spend money. Like, think how good an NAPD is. Now think an NAPD on steroids. Like, it's...
Well, is that card gonna help you a lot? Because isn't it per advancement token on the card, it increases it by two.
Yeah, they have to pay extra.
Right. So if you're fast advancing almost everything, they're not really gonna ever be taking it from the board, are they?
No, no, this is just everything that I've tried out,
Oh, okay.
right?
So I was okay. I thought you were saying that a card
No,
was in there.
that's what I try. Like I started off with this
Gotcha.
suite. I eventually cut that one because I thought I went heavily more on the fast advance style with the brain trust, medical breakthroughs, keeping 3 for 2, and then the fast advance, and I went down to 2 future perfects. So you have like I fluctuate between an 8 or 9 agenda build there. But Jinteki has options. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, you could put in NAPDs and make those work for you. But it will backfire if they flip your archives. I mean that's the bottom line, and that's the linchpin, and that's why I will say that this ID, as much as I've enjoyed playing it and how fun the games are, it's not a tier 1 yet, or it's not tier 1. I don't want to say yet because who knows if it'll ever be tier 1, but it's still keeping me at a positive win rate, but not a huge one.
I think it's a cool ID, and when it works well, it's going to be really nice for you, especially if you get a Sansan out there and they're not playing Imp, and then you draw up to the things you need. Like, it has some fun synergy to it, but it has some glaring holes to it, and I think to me that's the tricky part of this ID is that while it will work sometimes, there are certain matchups it's just going to get absolutely annihilated.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, I would have a very difficult time bringing it to a serious tournament that I wanted to win, because if I run into that matchup anytime in the Olymps, it's over, and I just don't want to I don't want to roll the dice like that.
Yeah, and I mean that's where it leaves us, searching for answers for IG, because I feel that there's not enough stuff that is protecting your archives. I mean, realistically, I think only Shock is the best right now. Shock is the best card you can have with this. The Shikyus are hit or miss. Take them if you want. Don't take them if you don't want them. But they also work for the archives. But there needs to be something else. We need to see another card that is punishing when revealed. I mean, especially if you really want to look ahead, you've seen Archive Interface, where we're removing cards that we access from the game. So I mean, if people want to run and remove that Shock after it's gone down the road, this is just going to lose steam. They need something that does more than a shock damage. That we need a threat.
What I think would be interesting, and maybe it'll synergize, and not that we get into feature cards too often, but since it's more related to this ID, we'll talk about it. I think the what's it called? Space Camp? The Wayland one that gives you the advancement token on a card that can be advanced. That would be really interesting, I think, because now you're feeding your trickle lights. So as a backup, you might want to play like Ice Walls or Shadow or something like that, to make sure you have something on the table to be advanced. But then you can, maybe you play Ronins, you play some sort of advanceable trap, and now they're running in there and they're going to A, take damage, and B, now they're giving you trickle light fuel, or maybe they're also advancing an agenda for you. So I don't know. I mean, I think maybe that might not be a great deck idea, but it's just maybe another way to synergize this deck with things that are coming and maybe give it a little bit of a boost.
Yeah. Connor, what's your thoughts here?
Um, it's going to greatly depend upon cards that are going to be coming in the future that we just can't really even speculate about at the moment, because it seems that if you want to
Well,
combat,
what about just competitiveness? Like, so you're like, we saying that. Are you saying there's too many holes right now? If we're starting to talk about the future and what other those cards can do, is it?
so well for IG in particular, I mean there is a very common threat to it that leaves it wide open, which is Imp, as Greg was saying, and then you've got and that's going to stop a lot of the builds that wouldn't do so well against an advanceable trap or a straight up damage build of it, but then anything that sneaks and peeks really really hurts it then. So it's kind of it can be undone. So if it becomes a big competitive presence, it can be undone very easily by a couple of common cards. If it just stays in obscurity, or if it's only one of those fringes or a tier 2 or tier 3 or wherever it winds up ending, then I think we'll see it be more competitive just because fewer people will be using it, if that makes any sense. That's that's all I can really foresee at the moment.
It's like a win by obscurity kind of thing, like haven't seen this in a couple months. Oh crap.
Yeah, well, or just that, let's just say that, and again, it's going to be heavily meta dependent. So if it comes to be a big boon to have an imp in every deck, or have infiltrates at hand, then it's going to be trouble.
You got the chat up there, Caleb?
You got some fans there, Caleb.
What do you say? Oh, new style is awesome. Oh, thanks.
He can actually read your comments now. Is what?
Yeah, I got it all up here.
No, I just meant because of the glasses.
Oh yeah. I was sporting contacts before I got tired of them though.
Yeah. And you know what? No, I do think that's where this card is going to be. Like I don't think that a Jinteki ID is, if we do have a tier system, I don't think a Jinteki ID is ever going to be bottom tier. Because of the threats that it could do to somebody. So I would say this is right at tier 2 right now. It's not it's not something that's going to drive the way into a new changing meta style, but it is a very interesting ability, and it forces a different style of gameplay.
Yeah,
which I really like for an ID. I love when an ID comes out and it brings with it a whole new style.
Lumber section. That's your style, Aaron. Until I got distracted by the funny man.
Yeah.
Aaron Andrews.
Just pops out of nowhere with a one-liner and then disappears into the shadows again, right?
I really like him. I just want to go on.
Everybody likes Aaron. Come on, man.
That's very witty.
Most likable guy in Netrunner. No, I think that's an interesting point, Jameson, as far as what you're saying. Just like it's a different way to look at it, and I think like a lot of times that's kind of how I look at, especially really interesting ones like this, where you're working with a dynamic of balancing your archives and what's on the board. Like there's a synergy, and you have to balance it. Like use IDs like this as a way to stretch your Netrunner mind. You know what I mean? Like build decks that tailor around it. Play it in a way that gets you thinking in different ways. Because eventually, the more I play this game, the more I can see why they call it a quote living card game genre, because it's like there is a whole world to explore within each identity or within a certain faction even, or however you want to look at it. And the more ways, like Ben B. Blum was teasing me last night for playing a non-traditional RP deck. Well, you'll very seldomly see me playing a traditional deck because I want to try and round my view on this game as much as possible. And the only way you can do that is by getting outside the box and trying stuff. And if you just keep playing whatever, you just follow on the fast track of what everyone else is doing, it's sure you'll get really good at those decks, but are you going to be really good at being ahead of the meta, which I think is where most people probably want to be, is you're actually on the cutting edge. So playing IDs like this will help you get there and thinking outside of the box. That's my rant for the day.
Go, Greg. What I find interesting now is that is the suite of ice that is available. I have been trying this with a lot of Grail ice too, and I think Grail ice might catch a lot of people off guard in store championships. Everybody that I've played against with the Grail suite has then turned around and told me how strong it is in Foundry, and that I should be expecting some heavily things with Grail and HB, but I find it's a lot of influence to use up. Hey, Greg, when we were crunching numbers on that, there was so much that could have gone into one of those builds, but I mean, I had like 5 or 6 influence sitting through sitting there in Grail ice inclusion.
Yeah. Grail is tricky because you have to devote so much to it. Like you have to have cards, and you have to have a deck that allows you to keep cards in hand. So you don't want to play heavy combo decks like Biotic Labor, Trickle Light. I think is tough because now you got to keep room for combos, agendas, and Grail Ice. It gets kind of difficult. So I think you want to play Grail Ice with decks that are going to be more straight up, maybe more like Glacier style, or where you don't have to keep as many combo pieces in hand. But when in decks where they're, where you've built them to work, I think they're pretty neat, and I think they do their job, and they're pretty strong.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just through practice. Grail in this it's been interesting. It's been interesting because it becomes a mind game about what I need to pitch. I mean, I really need to keep my archives fed, right? But with this, you really need to keep the Grail in your hand, and it's been a little bit struggled back and forth. We can side tangent right here. You guys, what's your thoughts on Excalibur recently? Christoph just says just wants to know how we feel about it in RP specifically. Is it broken?
No.
I don't feel it's broken, but I do think it's an interesting piece since it doesn't get broke by a standard breaker.
Yeah, it's a pain in the butt. I don't know that it's overpowered because there are a lot of ways to deal with it. AI, Parasite are going to be the two most common. And I think almost every deck is going to have that. Criminals maybe have a little bit of a hard time with Excalibur. But Shapers and certainly Anarchs are going to have no problem with that card.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's good. It's good early game. You're going to put it out there and it's going to come, but it's going to be one of those cards that when you're looking at your deck list, it's probably going to be one of the first batch cut to make room for something. It will, it will hold its value right now, but there's some AIs that are coming out in the next little bit that are probably going to be a lot more common. It's going to be like the insurgence of Atman at the time when everyone's running Eater. The interesting piece about Excalibur is that it doesn't I got caught with it off guard because it doesn't feed the other Grails.
Right. Yeah. You can't reveal cards with Excalibur like you can the other Grails. You can reveal Excalibur with the other cards, but Excalibur itself will not allow you to reveal other grail ice.
So that's that's really weird that they did it that way, so it doesn't synergize with the rest of them. So for ice composition here in IG, I would stick, like I said, I like the fast advance, I like the trick of lights, I like the sands. I would try and hold now one piece of advanceable ice, so you're working off, and something strong, not like a small ice wall that could get parasited off. One of the new Waylands that can go either way can definitely help you in this. The morph is good, something to feed and bounce around and just stop. One thing to notice too is a technicality thing. When the runner accesses archives, all the cards go face up and they access cards in the order that they so choose. Putting Hudson over your archives does not prevent all the cards from being flipped. You're still going to flip, and then they just get to only access one card. So don't think Hudson is going to save your bacon. Anything else you guys want to say about this ID?
I think I got all the pieces I wanted to get out.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with. I'm pretty happy with it. Caleb, overall thoughts in general? Where does it land for you?
For me, I very much enjoy it. I enjoy anything that beats the crap out of me for that's not Nearth Hub for a prolonged period of time, because it gives me that eye opener, right? That bar to shoot for. It's going to be a threat, so I need to come up with something that's going to be able to deal with it, yet still take on other common threats. So it's again just mind expanding. It really it adds that fluidity to the game, and that I love. So it's never static. Good old Netrunner. So I enjoy it.
Yeah, anything that can keep you on your toes, right? A new fresh take.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts, Greg. Anything you know that we're totally off topic, or anybody in the chat rooms here wants to pipe in with some questions or whatnot? Now's the time to throw that together. Greg, off topic conversation. Do you need to lead us somewhere?
Off topic. Yeah, I mean, I think we were kind of touching on it a little bit earlier in the show, but just maybe what to be ready for in terms of store tournaments, store championships, how to maximize them. I think it's a great opportunity not just to practice decks, but it's a great opportunity to practice tournament situations where the stakes are maybe a little bit higher. And this was mentioned, I think, in previous shows, but in terms of the skill level of Netrunner, I think, and I was talking about this in a post on StimHack, like if you were to do Worlds, I think you would see the top 32 not change too much. But the reason why, like, you might see really good players that consistently finish even in the top 8. But it's not necessarily that they're better, quote, Netrunner players. It might be that they're just better competitors in general. I mentioned this on the show, like Spags, when he played that game against Min in the Swiss tournament, literally dragged the game out as long as he possibly could so he could see Min's entire deck. In case he had to see him in the Olymps. Like, that's a gamer play. That's not just I'm here to win this game. No, that's I'm here to win this tournament. And he's thinking on a bigger level than maybe the average Netrunner player. And that just goes with experience and competition and sort of getting familiar with it. So, I think that's a really important aspect. You look at just in any sport, like there's people who just have that gamer mentality, that whatever it takes kind of mentality. And See if you can bring that to the store championships this round. I know that's something I'm working on. It's just having a little bit more, um, savvy in the moment sort of thing. So off topic entirely, but something that's been on my mind.
Caleb, is there something that you want to spark off, or do you want to hit this question in the chat?
No, I'm okay. What's the question? What we got going on?
Okay, so he says, I'm planning on bringing an EchoMind Overmind deck to store champs. Honestly, how do you think I will do? He's using Quetzal.
Huh.
So Echo Mind is how does that one work again?
It was that your hand size is equal to the memory limit, so he's getting a big memory limit, putting Overmind down and just getting a lot of counters for it.
Right. All right. I just wanted to make sure I knew what we were talking about.
So does that mean you haven't seen, obviously, this combo for the amount of Netrunner that you're playing there, Greg?
No, I haven't seen it.
So thoughts? Okay, so thoughts on the combo, Caleb?
Is that it for breakers?
Okay, so we'll be on a delay, so he'll have to chime back. But what do you think Quetzal in general? Then talk about that, Greg. What's the chances of a Quetzal going top?
All right. I like Quetzal. I like Quetzal a lot. I think she's really cool. I don't know that she's like awesome or tier 1. Maybe she is. Maybe she will be. But I really like her ability because it forces someone to get two barriers on a server if they want to stop you. That's not always easy to do. In early game, you rely on those barriers a lot. So she can get some good early aggression. She's really good, I think, for decks where you have like Overmind decks. I think it's really nice because you can make those sniper runs. So maybe you have a medium, you make a run, and then you can surge it or something. And now you don't want to use too many counters on on your Overmind. So maybe that's why you play surge, or maybe you play incubator. That might be a great, that might be a great thing actually. If you can sustain. If you can find a way to keep pressure on the Corp early game, which maybe with Quetzal you can, then you need some time obviously to get Echo Mind down, build up your hand, and get an Overmind in play. But you're going to need something else along the way to put pressure on them. But maybe that's how you close the game out, is something like an incubator medium. You let that thing sit there, get 5 counters on it, boom, swing them over, hit that big Overmind run. That might be a way to do it, but I don't think that's a totally dead combo. But it's going to require a certain amount of setup, and the fact that you can only run 3 Overmind in a deck and you're very limited, you're going to have to splash like Special Order, or you're going to have to splash Self-Modifying Code to make sure you can get the breaker when you need it. You'll need E3 as well, probably, most likely. So you're getting a lot of combo pieces now to make it work, but I'd say as long as you have a way to keep some pressure on, to force them to res some things, to keep them from just auto-scoring early game, you could have something there.
And wouldn't it be wonderful, too, if Switchblade Andy becomes such a big thing and people, instead of choosing to go more sentries with less end run, and they decide to go more Code Gate and Barrier, then that would make Quetzal that little bit much more better than she is now, too. That would be something cool to behold.
Maybe you splash, it's 3 influence, but maybe you splash the, what is it, Sage?
Yeah.
Because you have that huge MU, and then boom, drop the Sage. Now that Sage is at like 5-6. You have your Code Gates and Barriers. Well, I guess Barriers already taken care of Quetzal.
That's a pretty good piece right there.
But anyway, there's potential, but it might be slow and difficult to actually get it to fly against Near Earth Hub. That's what I think of it, because they're going to go so fast.
Yeah. Do you think Incubator is going to be a thing we need to watch out for? You seeing it?
In my noise deck, I started with 2, and it doesn't really suit at least the play style and how I'm playing Noise. I think Incubator, like I said, is going to be one of those cards that you really got to watch out for. A card like Overmind, where they drop Overmind with 6 counters, drop a medium, boom, slide over 4 counters onto that medium, and then make a 5-card dig with a demolition run. Like, I've been toying that deck around in my mind for a while. I think it'd be a sweet way to do it, but it's slow. That's the trick. Is like I said, how can you sustain pressure while you're building up that inevitability?
Caleb, what do you think the odds are for him in that deck?
Again, heavily dependent on your meta. If you know the people that you're going to be coming up against, and you know what they like to bring, and you don't think anybody's going to be bringing anything that's really going to shake it up, and you're going to do this, and you're going to be the one shaking it up, then you get a distinct advantage from that. I mean, Jameson, you can speak to that firsthand with your big breaker win. Seems like ages ago now, but I mean, you go somewhere and you shake it up, and it's back there. You can see it on his desk or his bookshelf. But you shake it up, and it's so much of an edge for you. It's so much of an advantage that oftentimes it can lead to you taking first place. So don't let the dream die. Or I'm going to say, no matter what we say here, I still think that you should definitely try it out. But don't try it out against the meta that you're going to be bringing it to. You're going to have to surprise them with it. Otherwise,
but what do you think? What do you think? Your opinions on the deck build like that, from your captain consistency, and from what he's talking about, and from what what Greg's just said.
Yeah.
You're looking at like what 5 or 6 cards that you need to see now. Like
possibly. But if most of your splash goes to tutorage, then you should be okay. Like you will be okay, and you will be able to make what would make the most sense in it is the frequent runs won't make sense, but finding a way to make very damaging runs. So what are we looking at there? It's Keyhole, right? I think Keyhole might be an ideal way to do that, because then you could be getting in there and causing a lot of damage. Heavy, medium, that sort of thing would make more sense than just trying to make frequent runs with something that's exhaustible.
My answer to your question is I will never tell anybody not to pursue an idea on a deck, but if that's all this is an idea, I know you've said that you got the deck built and you published it and stuff like that, but you got to make sure that if you're running a weird deck like this, make sure you just have the reps in. You got to know a deck inside and out, and not just have a thought about it. You play it. If you're really comfortable with it, I say go for it. If you're not, and I mean, if you played it 100 times and it's won like 15, then I've had those decks that, unfortunately, as awesome as it is, you want to play it, you're just going to have to let the hard to reach ones go sometimes. I think Ben had a question in here. What do you think about Viper in NEH as another 3-res, 4-tax piece of ice? Start the round table, Greg. He's got 3 Biotics, 3 Elis, 2 Vipers, 3 wraparounds.
Viper. I don't know. I love the card, but I don't love the card. I mean, clearly, and let's think about it even from a core NBN perspective. It's obviously better in there because you have the trace credits, but what I find with Vipers, if people want to get through, they get through. They just pay. It's not uncommon for the runner to have an economic advantage. I think the advantage you have with Near Earth Hub is the speed. And why mess around with being able to let a runner pay through a trace? I mean, if you pin him with it, you hit him early with it, and then you kind of get ahead of the power curve. Sure, it's a nice card, but if the runner has an advantage on you, it becomes exponentially worse, because then they just pay through it. and it's who cares? They run on last click and pay through one trace 3, and if it's Andy, then you really, I don't know. I just think it's not reliable enough. Eli is like money; it's always going to tax you.
Yeah, Viper's hit or miss for me. Just almost for the same reasons. Losing a click if able. I mean, you might as well just have an Enigma there just to do the same thing. The traces really, I don't know. I'm hit or miss with traces these days on ice, and I don't know if it's because I try and run. Okay, so let me take a step back and say, I had a big conversation. Caleb, you were there when we were talking about this at Worlds, about how to run a deck with Stephen Woolley from Team Covenant, and he's telling us about these thoughts about the discussions that him and Tim Bunn have, and it's about where you're putting your money and being efficient with your money, and you know, if you're ending the game and you have like 35 credits, did you play an efficient game? You know, you want to finish, you want to get money in and spend money, you know, money in, money out. And when I start to play with this trace ice, I just find I'm tapping myself out of money myself sometimes. I've tried to steer clear of traces and recently.
Seems like Ben was using this as an opportunity to broadcast his love for Viper more than get our opinion.
Why, is something else happened there that I didn't see, or he just brought a wooden spoon and stirred the pot?
Maybe a little bit, but it's the thing is that and there he chimes in. I was just about to say it. It's terrible on centrals because you want to defend what are you defending against? Legworks and Maker's Eyes and indexing, and if they have those cards in hand and they see a Viper there and they're richer than you, then they're in.
Pay for it. They'll pay for it.
You know what I mean? So you can just get through it. It's nice. It's nice to pay 3 for a 4 strength ice. That is fantastic. It beats Yogg right off the bat. For all those reasons, I absolutely love it. But at the end of the day, its power fades very fast to me, and it's very dependent on the runner state and how good it is.
What about Jinteki, where running on the last click is a little bit risque?
And what about the fact that Gingerbread just eats this so...
Hey, you're right, man. Ginger's gonna come back.
Gingy.
I was just messing with you, Ben, by the way. I'm just getting you back.
He's just figuring out the best way to use 5 influence, because it feels like Architect isn't worth the 2 influence, especially not worth going down to 2 biotics. Have we seen Architect's bubble pop?
No, I don't think so. I'm landing Architects like it's left, right, and center.
Yeah, you're not seeing a lot of people put Mimics down and then...
Well, I'm not playing near Earth Hub anymore either. I get them to land all the time in HB.
You're back home?
I'm back home. Back home in my HB world.
So, guys, closing thoughts here. What do you got on your plate then? What's the sign off? Connor?
What's the sign off?
Last closing thoughts here.
Catchphrase.
Everybody, good luck in your store championships. Maybe we'll if you're close to the Canadian border near Ontario, might bump into you. We'll see. See how far we're willing to travel. But that's it.
Yeah, the east side of Michigan should see me a couple times, and I will try and make it down to Millennium Games down in Well, it's in the state of New York, just somewhere there. So anywhere within three and a bit hours circumference there.
Canadian hours or United States hours? We use metric hours.
Yeah, Canadian hours. What's that?
It's out of 100.
Yeah, 100 minutes in an hour. Yeah, guys, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks everybody who popped in the chat. I know we do these more sporadically now when we have time, but it's still nice to really see the turnouts we get when I post this as we're going live, saying, "Hey, come join us, hang out with us for an hour, and talk Netrunner." We're going to store championships now. We are trying to get Ian Birdsall from Fantasy Flight Organized Play on the show, and we are coming up in the next month or so to our 100th episode of Bad Publicity, where we would
syndication.
Yeah, we go on repeat soon on cable television.
Cut us off, yeah.
But we are hoping that the man himself, Lucas, will be gracing us for the big triple-digit episode. So, guys, tune in for that stuff. Thank you again very much for your time.
Oh, thanks to all the commenters about my upgrades here. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Take care. Have a great evening, night, morning.
Adios.